IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
Music drives culture. This has been a fact across the world for decades. But in India, in many ways, while music was at the forefront of culture, it's always been an associate of sorts to cinema. But that's quickly changed over the last few years, where artists and musicians have gone from being support systems to grow culture with cinema. They're actually now driving it independently. They become creators in their own right and are fast changing not just how consumers, but also brands really interact with them and work with them. To dig a little deeper into this, I have Aayushman Sinha on the podcast today. He's the co-founder and director at Black Cab, and he's been one of those people who's really worked with so many musicians to drive this change in our market. I'm Varun Duggirala, and this is Advertising is Dead. Right back with Aayushman.
Remember the days when our granny used to narrate once upon a time stories? Let's bring back the good old days of moral stories with Storytime Tamil. Hi, I am Ravishankar Balachandran, host of Storytime Tamil podcast. I would like you to entertain and educate your children with stories from Storytime Tamil. Tune in to the new episode sharp at 7 p.m. every day on IVM website, IVM podcast app, YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're talking to Aayushman. Aayushman, we've been talking about doing this for way too long to finally do this.
I don't know if we've spoken a lot about it, but I listen to this podcast religiously. And I've been a fan, and I've told you this, I think, a few hundred times already. And for me to be on this podcast is honestly like a really big deal, a really big honor. And when you told me, I just I think I took 3 seconds to say yes. So I've been super excited about this. This has honestly been one of my favorite podcasts, and I say that all the time. And I'm glad to be here.
Always happy to have a happy listener coming in as a guest to give more value. I think that's a good, I think that's the cycle, which I think all of us podcasters want. We want good listeners to come in and give more value so they can add more listeners into the mix. But, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the podcast as well, right, is that there's been a lot of action happening in this intersection between brands on one end, creators, music, and what was called celebrity, which is now, I think that world is merging. What is a creator? What is a celebrity? What is a musician is now, I think, all of the same. And you've kind of been at this intersection. So kind of broad strokes view of how things have evolved in the last few years. How have you seen it, both from what you guys have been doing, but also on the other end from, how you are seeing everyone interact?
Yeah, so I think this is something I keep telling everyone when I speak to them, is that the value an artist or a creator can really add to a brand's amplification is probably going to be slightly higher. And if not higher in terms of reach, it's definitely going to have a lot more affinity. Because an artist, similar to a sports person, is very authentic. They're not playing an external character. They're not trying to be someone else. They are themselves. That's why they have this very strong affinity with an audience that really, really likes them. They don't like a particular character that they might have played in a music video, or they don't like a particular character that they might have played in a film, for example. They love them for the kind of music they write. They love them for the kind of content they put out. They love them for everything they do on a general day-to-day basis. So the affinity towards an artist or a creator is a lot higher, in my opinion, because they're really engaged. They actually follow you. That niche is really what everyone is trying to build on, and that smaller cult becomes a stronger community over time. So we've realized that this is really important. We've realized that this can drive a lot higher ROI for a brand in particular when they work with people that actually represent them slightly better. They work with people that already have this strong affinity base. And we've been trying to find solutions, or rather to build opportunities for artists in this particular space for a long time now.
And as you've been looking at the solutions, right, I think what's interesting is, I think especially over the last few years, because artists, the entire music space at some point had become this, okay, you're going to either make money through performances, which I think a large amount of the money was kind of coming in pre-pandemic, You are also doing stuff with brands in what was traditionally more, okay, I hate to use the word talent, but I'm going to put that word out there. But without live being having happened, with digital really driving things, how you even I won't even say package, how do you put things together change, especially with musicians? Because they've had to kind of almost like rewire a few things about how they function, right?
So honestly, and I keep talking to my artists about this, initially when COVID struck, we were all like really worried that, live events would contribute to almost 85 to 90% of revenue for an artist in particular. So the music would maybe contribute to 5% and 5% was brands. So to live your life of just 10% of what would have been there would have been really difficult. And everyone was initially in a state of panic. But what we realized was the pandemic gave us like a really strong opportunity at the same time as well. We saw that no films are going to come out for the next 6 months. That meant that all your mainstream editorial slots that were available on a streaming platform, on YouTube as well, everything that was available for free, that was editorial that could be curated, was now available for independent artists to come and take over. So while major labels would not put out music till they had like a big package video, till they had a bigger rollout, because they obviously want to spend a lot of money to make sure this does right. For independent artists, this is a much better opportunity to actually come front and center for anyone who wanted to discover new music. So we put out a lot of music. In the course of 2020 to 21, we put out, I think, 75 songs in total from our small roster of 10 artists. Everyone did exceedingly well. Everyone grew very well on socials. An average growth on socials was about 3x, and average growth on monthly listeners was about 2x. And everyone got a lot of discoverability. While this happened, this obviously increased their revenue from music substantially higher, but they started building a much bigger community. We then figured that this community is ready to be monetized when we feel that, we've identified the right benchmarks to hit there, be it in terms of just reach, be it in terms of the kind of engagement we're delivering, etc. And then we went out to brands and said that, we've done X, Y, Z things. Why don't you give this a shot? One of my favorite ones was we had this song called Duriya by an artist called Zaydin. This was shot in the lockdown. This was shot in May of 2020. So this was right when there was no movement whatsoever. Yeah. And I remember Bumble had come out with a video calling feature within their platform. And we told them that, this is the best time for you to actually showcase two people who are far from each other, who want to be with each other, are not able to talk, and can use your platform to do that better. We used that in our music video that did exceedingly well. The video was trending. It got great amount of views. It did really well on streaming. And it got more faith in even the brand to understand that, okay, fine, I'm not going to do my mainstream ad, but I can park some amount of money behind something like this and see how that pans out. So we kept on trying to just innovate and find better resources. And we used the pandemic to really scale our content versus anything else. And that did really well for us. Now that we're back on track, we now have a substantially higher commitment from brands when it comes to just the overall revenue pie for an artist. And what we're really excited about building going forward is a lot more commerce with these artists. So we're trying to set up brands with these artists. We're trying to set up more businesses with these artists so they can leverage their community better. They can leverage their understanding of their community better to actually sell products to them which they want.
No, while you were speaking, I was thinking that if you look at even pre-pandemic, there was still, there was a period, I would say, like even way back when independent music was a thing. And then at some point, I think just like film music came in and took a larger chunk of that. Even independent artists were largely singing for movies. And do you think this is almost a point to hit that, okay, independent music is now pretty much driving things? Because I don't think even now with movies coming back the way they have, that surge has gone away. People have now latched on to independent music a lot more. The artists have a lot of recall. Plus, on the other end, brands know that this is another cultural layer I can tap into a lot more. Then they actually, I think it was underutilized in many ways, right? Have you seen that shift almost?
100%. So even if you look at let's talk pure play data. Even if you look at charts right now, if you open Spotify, there's an AP Dillon song called Excuses that's number one right now.
Yeah.
If you open Apple Music, the number one song right now is a song called Pasuri, which is actually from Coke Studio, Pakistan. Both independent artists, both not backed by any major label, don't have any major investment in terms of visuals in either of these projects, purely grown on listener affinity, don't have the massive bandwidth of investing a few $100,000 into the marketing. These have not been built in that way. They've purely grown on their merit and they've done really well. At the same time, you had like probably 10 massive films that have released just in the past 4 months.
Yeah.
And these are still steadily like holding that ground at the number one position. So everyone is seeing it. I mean, it's there for everyone to notice. You'll also see the change in strategy of just music labels, where they would earlier like go all out to acquire as much film music as possible, but now they are rewriting their own rules and focusing a lot more on singles. Even if they have song from a film coming out, they're positioning it as a single first and not even talking about the film right now because they want the song to do really well. So that entire shift from a music industry point of view, I think everyone has understood it. Brands are still catching up to it, but I'm sure it's sooner than later that we'll see them coming up front and center with this. Even if you look at examples like a Jalebi Baby, where Zomato had that beautiful integration and it was just so neatly done. When you see such mainstream brands getting into it, I'm sure this is something that's bound to happen.
I also feel it's like, see, globally, music has always been the driver of culture. And in many ways, for us, we've always had films drive culture. And it's been this almost switch in the last 2.5 years. And if you talk about who's really driving culture, be it from fashion, from just work with brands, you see all that, you see a lot more musicians doing that. But on the other side, how many people have you worked with who said, okay, I just want to make my music. I don't know if I want to create content for social as much, but are you seeing lesser and lesser of that now? Because there is also one entire bunch saying, I just want to make the right kind of music. I don't know if I can actually be a creator, if that's the term.
Every single artist is saying exactly what he just mentioned. So many times when we present a song to our labels or our distributors, they come back to us saying that, ye reels pe viral kaise karenge? How can we make it dancier in that particular way? How can we grab that 15-second attention span? And we're telling them over and over again that that's not what you need to chase. A good song will carry, a good song will do really well, a good song will create that kind of impact. And I think Coke Studio Pakistan comes at the right time every single time and shows us that that's how it can be done, where you don't need a commercially designed song to do well, you just need good music to really travel.
So let me pick up on that point, right? It's easy. I personally hate the word viral. It is like by far the bane of my existence has been for the last few decades. I think that isn't going away, unfortunately, for any of us. It is still a term we hear often enough. But when you are working with brands now, what are you kind of going with saying? What more can you kind of do, especially with culture driving, which I think is in many ways what you're really focusing on, right? So you can really tap into what is popular culture now. You can reach out to an audience beyond what is mainstream in that sense. Continues to be what we all say. At many ways, are you seeing different kinds of modes to connect brands with culture in terms of what you're interacting with brands, and what have you seen as being successful models to kind of follow beyond the let's make a viral reel? What have been some cases where you've actually been able to do that?
So we're honestly going back to brands and saying that, do you just want to build an internet movement, or do you want it to actually show your product properly being used? Do you want the use case to come out, or do you just want that one press release or that one post that said that, oh, look at what this particular brand did? So we're kind of questioning that at this point. And we're citing examples that have done really well. So we spoke about Jalebi Baby. That was a great use case example of how a product can be fit into a music video. We did something with Sugar Cosmetics and Arman Malik for his song You, where you have these makeup trends going on, which are obviously massive on Instagram, and they have these entire transitions that are really big. We involved the brand along with what we wanted to build as our part of our reel strategy. And we told them that, why don't you activate X number of influencers at your end, get them to do exactly what we have planned in general, which is more organic, but just seed your brand in a more seamless manner. That ended up getting them closer to 100 million views. That ended up doing a lot better for them. So we're trying to get brands to be more subtle. We're trying to get them to agree to be more surrogates so that they come out front and center from a use case versus just being that this is my logo, this is my 10 seconds, this is where XYZ is happening. We're trying to bring out use case a lot better by keeping it more organic. One of my favorite brand integrations we've done for a music video is actually with this artist called Zayden, where we shot a very simple music video. The brand was nowhere in the music video. There was a hair cream called Arata.
Okay.
And all we did was we shot a BTS of that, and we just showed him getting ready for a shot, putting the cream, taking 3 seconds. He asked for his makeup artist. The makeup artist doesn't appear. All that comes in is a cream. He puts his cream on and he's ready to do a shot, and he starts performing exactly what was there in the music video. That subtler piece of content ended up doing so much better as compared to those where we've had brands front and center with us, where we've exactly stuck to their guidelines in terms of how they want the caption to be framed, how they want the picture to look, etc. So we're just trying to take as much control of the creative and convince them to look at results versus just look at the delivered product at that point. So we want to have more feedback conversations versus pre-production conversations.
What you just said makes me also think about one aspect, right? Is that the consumers also changed, right? I think the consumer, what they want, how they want the interaction between music and brand, or even how they want to deal with, I'm going to steal the term using, how do you create an internet movement? What are internet movements for them in that sense? So what have you actually learned, if you look at the last few years, and what have you learned about the consumer in terms of what they're really looking for versus what you maybe thought they looking for a few years ago?
So we've understood that the consumer is not like earlier people would think I would have to dumb down things a lot for a consumer to understand what I'm trying to do. And I'm sure you've had brands come to you 10 times over कि नहीं ये बहुत ज़्यादा complicated है, ये नहीं समझ में आएगा.
Yeah.
Or that this
lowest
is just,
common denominator was the term often used, right?
Yeah. So people keep asking us to dumb things down, and we realize that the consumer is not someone who needs something dumbed down. They just want it to come in a way that isn't too invasive. They don't, probably at this point, they don't want it to be too much in the face. They would rather have it more subtle. They would rather have it in a more enjoyable format. When you look at cred ads, for example, that's something you look forward to viewing. Every time Netflix puts out a piece of content, you look forward to that. You don't realize that it's being advertised to you.
Yeah.
So I think consumers love storytelling. And if an artist can tell that story in their own format, that's going to be a lot better. The artist writes the story, it's always a lot better versus the brand telling the artist that, this is the story you need to tell.
I want to take a step aside from this. Like, how did you get into this space? How has your journey been through the end? Like, I do know that you did start off pretty early on. From what 18 is when you first got into the space. But how did you gravitate towards this entire space, and how has that journey been?
So 18 is the official story. The unofficial story is obviously very different. I was 15 or 14 and I was still in school. I was in my 9th grade. At that time, I realized that a lot of my seniors in school in the 10th grade wanted to go to nightclubs, and to go to nightclubs, they would need a fake ID. So I would use Microsoft Paint and create a fake ID for them by scanning my sister's college ID card and just putting the name, putting the photos, get it laminated with the shop outside my house and end up selling it to these guys. And that's how I started making a lot of money when I was a kid. Going forward, I realized that even after fake ID, these guys still need to pay a lot of money to get into the nightclub. So what if I can get that cost down? So I reached out to the nightclubs, told them I'm 28 years old, asked them to let me start a guest list, told them to pay me for every person I send them on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night, because those nights are anyways empty for them, and I would send all of these guys. So I think I'm the godfather of underage clubbing in India in a way, and that's how I really got associated with entertainment and nightlife in particular. That passion obviously kept going forward. Everyone, I think every event manager that's ever born out of India has always had their first shake at things at their college festival. That's where it happened for me as well. So first of all, while I was in college, I started a marketing agency. I realized I knew a lot of small restaurant and bar owners, and they were still not ready to pay higher retainers, and they just wanted someone to basically set up almost like a menu card for them on their social media that could tell where what is available, what is happening on a particular day. So I took that up, started handling a lot of social media clients, picked up, that did really well. It was an agency called #Media Solutions. We were doing really well. We picked up a lot of clients. Cut to my college festival happening. I meet this guy called DJ Chetas. He's now probably Asia's biggest DJ. And he comes and tells me that, my manager has left me. Why don't you start managing me? And I was shocked. I was confused. I didn't know how this would work. But he said, just give it a shot. I think you'll like it. I was still not convinced. Then he offered me what any college kid in the world would be happiest to get. He told me I would get 2 bottles of alcohol at any nightclub I would choose every month if I agreed to do this. So I was sold instantly. I didn't need anything else beyond that. That was the last thing I needed. And I just went in blind with it, tried to do things differently. I obviously had a marketing background from the work I did. So I tried to apply more marketing versus what management really was more either on the agenting side or it was more secretarial. We started figuring out how can we grow him on socials. We started figuring out how can we get people to listen to him more. We wanted to connect the word Bollywood DJ to Chetas instantly. So if anyone says Bollywood DJ or Bollywood dance music, it has to be DJ Chetas. And we started working on that. That did really well. And then a lot of other artists started approaching me to do this. So I had to shut down the marketing agency, then go fully into artist management and start building that. This was around the age of 19, I assume. And then by the time I was 24, I realized that, okay, this is all set. Everything is great. I don't need to put in more energy into this. I've hired a great team. Everyone's doing really well. I want to go back into marketing. I want to go back to doing what I love the most. And I had three of my best friends running an agency called Black Tab at that point. They were using this agency mainly to provide advertising to people who wanted to put up billboards, who wanted to put up those bus stand banners, etc. And we got together and said that, why don't we focus on building this as a digital first agency? Why don't we put in more efforts into that? And we partnered, and that's been doing exceedingly well. So it's honestly just finding the right opportunities with whatever resources were available and being able to service them in the best possible manner. That's really been what my story is about.
There's so many questions I have on that, but I know we need to go for a break. So I'm going to quickly do that, come back, because I have a bunch of follow-ups to your story.
Don't you think that if everyone around you is getting smart, you better be smarter? Hey there, I'm the traveling professor Siddharth Deshmukh, and I'm back with season 2 of my podcast to make you smarter. Smarter with Sid. What's this season's focus about? Well, it's about 10-minute nuggets that will make you stand out at work. It's time to go from smart to smarter. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday and become smarter with Sid.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. Before the break, we got into Aayushman, your entire journey, and there are a few things I want to pick up from that. Right? One is the fact that it's almost like you were at those points where there was an opportunity and there was an innovation required, and you jumped onto that and moved with it, which I feel is something which most entrepreneurs actually learn. That okay, this is an opportunity, this is a problem. You literally went, okay, this is the problem. They don't have IDs. This is a problem. They don't have, the club doesn't have guests. These guys don't know how to get in. And even post that, I think, especially with Chetas, what you just said, and I realized that at that point, is that at some point of time, I remember that if you said Bollywood DJ, you'd only think of his name. I couldn't think of any other name during a specific period of time apart from his. And when you're kind of going through all of this, how do you feel you have evolved as an entrepreneur during this period? What have you kind of learned that you feel like, even that's what I've actually learned over the last 5 odd years. What would those things be?
First of all, I'm a very responsible person now. I pay all my taxes. I do not promote anything.
No fake IDs, none of that stuff.
No fake IDs, nothing. That was just a lie. I never meant that. I'm lying. If anyone from any authority is listening, but I'm a much more responsible person now, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the second thing I learned, and this is something I think every entrepreneur does end up picking up on, is your team is everything. I'm a very curious person. I have a lot of passion points. I want to spend time to understand those. I want to deep dive into them. I'm probably going to fail at them, but I still want to give it a shot. I still want to give it enough time. And I'm grateful that I have a great team and I've understood the value of a team. So now, before I even think of doing anything else, I try to find the right people to even manage that. And that's the reason I'm able to run a few multiple businesses while focusing on this. The third really important thing I picked up from this entire journey of mine was starting early. When I started early, I realized that I have no responsibilities. I have nothing to lose at this point. So even if I do fail, even if I do end up messing up, I have a very big safety cushion of time by my side where I can figure out what to do next. So I was very happy. And in hindsight, I'm really happy that I was able to do a few things a lot earlier than others, because that just allowed me to experiment. Chetas probably wasn't expecting someone to focus on marketing, because when you wanted a manager, you wanted an agent, you wanted someone who would just go out and either get you more business or would go out and make sure your calendar is completely full, everything is taken care of, etc. Out here, in fact, he was stuck with a kid who just wanted to understand how we can make this particular artist bigger. I wanted to understand that how can I get Chetas on every radio station? How can I get Chetas his own TV show? I wanted to understand how can I get him to play a very big wedding and then to run a press release around that, for the fact that he was the one who was at one of the biggest weddings that the country had seen. So that was my focus area, and I realized that these kind of things work slightly better. And when you're young, you can experiment. When you're young, you can make mistakes. And I would love to get more time to make as many more mistakes as possible.
You mentioned team a little earlier, and especially in a space like the entertainment space, the kind of people you need and the kind of almost like mindset you require is super important. So when you're hiring people, what are you looking for? What do you generally look for when you're hiring people for your team?
So as a management agency, I think the first thing most people would look at is events experience. We've completely negated that altogether now. I'm trying to find more marketers, because at the end of the day, it's the marketers that understand what kind of thing can result in what kind of an effect. So we know exactly that if we do X number of things, this is what the result is going to be against that. So I'm looking for marketers and strategists now. I think anyone who has a mindset to think in those particular ways, that's really exciting to me. You need someone. So artist management is a little bit of a thankless job. People don't really. It's obviously behind the scenes, right? So you never really know who's done what. You never really know what has happened, etc. And even artists obviously are very insecure in general. They have a lot of stuff they have to deal with on a daily basis, and they also need that cushion to be able to say whatever they want to a particular person. So someone with like a very solid temperament, someone who has the ability to be very empathetic and compassionate at the same time, I think that is very, very important. So even if you speak to anyone from my team, you'll realize they're all of a particular type. And I don't know how to really word that better, but they're probably some of the best listeners you're going to come across in the entire industry. They're probably some of the most honest people you're going to come out with in the entire industry. Because again, entertainment has always had this sort of black shadow over it that, there's a lot of shady stuff happening here. There's a lot of things are not as transparent as you would imagine them to be. So we try to find people who instill that kind of trust, not just in our artists, but also in the overall economy in general, in the overall industry in general.
It's interesting you said that, because that you're not looking at people who have, let's say, events experience as much as you look at marketers. Has it also been because, like, for instance, you're seeing performances have been happening in the virtual space? There's a whole chat about the metaverse performance, which definitely want to ask you if that is still something which is it still a marketing gimmick, or is that actually going to be a thing that we do more and more of? But as things are becoming more digital, is that why you would feel that the marketing part has kind of scaled up a lot more?
Not really. That's not our main area of concern. So I've always had a thought process that we're not the best agents in the country. We're probably the worst from an agenting point of view. We're probably one of the better management agencies in the country. So what that thesis basically is that if I'm able to grow an artist to become big enough, if I'm able to market an artist in a way that they have a stronger community, they have a stronger fan base for themselves, they will automatically be pushed onto the best events and experiences. It's more of a pull strategy. We aren't trying to sell our artists. People are inquiring for us. 99% of the business we do is inbound queries. 1% is us going out and actually trying to sell. So we want to make our artists as big as possible so that people want them versus anyone else. We don't want to be one of the 10 artists presented for a campaign or for an event. We want to be the only artist that a promoter wants to book for a particular event. Obviously, the execution stuff, you need an incredible events team for that. And we have probably some of the best people to do it. But that's something which we can train people to do. And that's not so to teach someone marketing is a much longer learning curve versus teaching someone how to handle logistics for an event or how to scale an event. Also, when it comes to events, things like scaling a concert or building a stronger set or building a much better production setup, I think these are things that shouldn't be done in-house. I think these are things for which you bring on professionals, you bring on the best talent in the country. We have such incredible engineers and production designers in our country. I would rather have them work and do this than find someone in-house and expect them to apply the same skill set to 15 different artists who have probably very different needs. So to understand what you need to outsource and what you need to build as a core competency is why I focus a bit more on marketers, because I genuinely want everything to now reach a point where it becomes all inbound. We filter the best and we deliver the best for our artists versus actually going out and trying to sell in, we don't want to be that one apple with 100 apples. We want to be great standalone.
You have that, there's that one apple everyone comes for rather than using this is my entire fruit stall. Who do you want to pick in that sense? I've just continued your fruit analogy just to kind of take that ahead.
Yeah, my fruit analogy died midway, and thank you for saving it.
One of the things you hear the most around artists lately, which is something which I am still wrapping my head around to see how much of it will stick and how much of it will end up not really working, is the NFT space, right? You're talking about how much artists, especially anybody who's an artist, needs to launch an NFT, people will buy it, revalue. Now, I've always seen it as saying, okay, there's a strong chance 80% of these NFTs might have zero value in the years to come. But it's still something that we should explore to see that 20% will still hold so much more. How are you seeing that kind of playing into how talent, especially musicians, kind of jump into this?
No, I completely agree with your thought process. And we want to bet on the 20% to make sure that at least we're present. If we fail, like I've already told you, we're not scared of failure. There's nothing to lose for an artist by putting out the NFTs. But I think a lot more thought process needs to go into utilities when it comes to NFTs. So we won't. And India as a market is very utility focused, right? I don't think we're going to have a lot of hype NFTs where people are just going to buy it because a particular artist put it out. I think it needs to have a layer of really strong utility along with it. So We Friends is probably one of my favorite NFT projects by Gary Vee. Just the amount of detail that went into every single thing, the kind of experiences that are linked to it, the fact that they can enter this event that he's going to be doing over the next 2 years, all of that, just the amount of utility he's put into that one project, that's what we take as inspiration, and that's how we want to go forward with this. I also see NFTs as a great source of fundraising for a lot of independent artists. In a similar format to how Nas put out his album with Royal, where he wanted to raise, I think, $400,000, and he put it out together with Royal, where he's actually giving out a share of his income with his artists. That's going to be a really interesting space for us to see, especially since we've had this entire Shark Tank moment in India. Everyone now wants to become an angel investor in some format or the other. Everyone wants to bet on things that they feel are really going to blow up. So I feel like for fundraising too, NFTs are going to be brilliant for independent artists where they want to put out projects where they probably can't raise funds from a music label or don't want to raise funds from a music label rather. I also think NFT marketing is going to be like a very key, like how we had influencer marketing earlier and brands would not be too sure, but now it's part of every single rollout. I think an NFT strategy is going to be a part of every brand's rollout as well. I think it's going to be very, very critical.
How do you see a brand? I want to go deeper into that. How do you see a brand really digging into, let's say, an artist's NFT? How do you see that really working? If I'm a brand today and I'm sick, I want to understand how this can actually work to my benefit. What would you say?
So, for example, let's say Coke Studio as probably the best set an example because they are obviously also exploring a lot in the metaverse right now. While they're putting out all of this incredible content, you can have some of it gated. And if you look at the BTS content, it's absolutely incredible to see how these guys have worked on the music. And I'm a big nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff, so I really spend a lot of time focusing on it. But just the kind of content you can gate behind an NFT is just the first part of it. For people who are really enthusiastic about it, for people who really want to understand that better, it's great. For any brand, I think they will now realize that they need to take experiences on ground because that's been missing for 2 years and every brand is trying to figure out which is the best way to take that live. To again build that around a community versus just keeping it open to everyone. To roll out tickets in the form of an NFT would be great as well. In general, anything a brand wants to do around community, I think NFTs are a great route to follow through for that. I've had people come to me and tell me that, Thumbs Up is a brand they've grown up with and they've loved it for the longest time. So I never thought someone would be passionate about Thumbs Up in a particular way. But
I am one of those people. Extremely passionate about Thumbs Up.
I am definitely one of them. I was never vocal about it, but if I could associate with it through
100%.
an NFT, I would love to show my affinity for the brand in that particular way.
Still my favorite cola brand by leaps and bounds, and I think across everything. I was also super kicked by the latest campaign, so I'm a sucker for.
I'm a sucker for Shah Rukh Khan as well. So.
Exactly, seeing Shah Rukh Khan that way is always a sucker for, and I also actually enjoyed the Telugu one with Vijay Deverakonda. So I was like, but before we get into Shah Rukh and Thumbs Up fanboying, there's one piece you spoke about, right? Is that obviously with live events coming back, with offline events, not online events coming back, and also at the same time we're talking about the metaverse as this whole thing, right? You mentioned in Coke Studios really looking into that space as well. There were many models of virtual events that saw success during the pandemic. Do you see that still playing out? Do you see virtual still being a key thing, or are you just like, are you going to go back to default setting of performances are in person only, or is there a hybrid somewhere?
So from an India market in particular, I think it's only going to be like the very strong diaspora acts that are going to be able to build this particular virtual sort of setting where, for example, if I'm an Raja fan and I'm sitting in California and I really want to enjoy an experience of his, maybe then it makes more sense for a virtual concert because you can't always have someone touring in that particular market. But from at least whichever virtual concerts we participated in, none of them were really as exciting as possible. There's a music festival called Tomorrowland that probably built one of the best formats of a virtual concert. But then again, you're always stuck for bandwidth. You're always stuck for... You don't get those goosebumps seeing an artist on a screen as you do when it's live. So I'm still trying to figure out how that would probably pan out. But I feel like NFTs as tickets will be a very cool play because number one, right now when I buy a ticket, say for example, from a book by show, I can't transfer that to anyone. There's a reason if I'm not able to go to a concert, I would really want someone else to do it and I would and I don't want that money to go wasted. So just from an authenticity point of view, the fact that it's on the blockchain and you can see where it's originated from, you can transfer it to someone without having any counterfeit. I think that's going to do really well. I think artists can reserve certain spots for buyers who are of their NFTs. Like you can build your own experience zones within concerts, etc., which could do really well. But when it comes to concerts in the metaverse, I think there's still a bit of time. There's been a few great gaming case studies, obviously, with the Marshmallow concert or the Travis Scott concert. But I think it's still a little early for India, at least. We'll be able to see that.
Yeah. I think also, and I feel that we're all enjoying getting out again after what feels like a long time. So to make, I think that it'll take a lot of effort for someone to make me wear a VR headset at this point of time. Like, no, 100%. I want to just go out, take
100%. And Varun, now that you bring that up, I'll tell you something. It was so difficult for an artist to sell tickets, especially in India before. It was so difficult for us to even sell, say, for example, 500 tickets to a concert for an artist that's been around for a long time. But now that things are opened up, people are so eager for these experiences and they've built such strong, and I keep coming back to affinity, but in the lockdown, they've built such strong affinity to certain artists whose music really supported them. They are spending really good money to come out and watch Indian homegrown artists at various different venues. I'll give you an example of an artist we managed called Anuv Jain. He did his first ever India tour last year in October. This was just, we luckily made it between two waves and we were able to execute an entire 10-city India tour. This was the first time he was going on tour. We did, I think, 11,000 tickets across these 10 cities. Average price for a ticket was around 2,200 rupees, which was the base price for a Justin Bieber concert when it happened in India, which is what you pay for a Marshmallow or an Alan Walker or any other international artist performing in the country. That's how much money you end up paying. But homegrown, independent, domestic artist performing his first ever tour was able to sell at that particular price point. If anyone is on the internet, there's no way they've missed the AP Dillon tour, which happened. And that was all over the place. He did massive number of shows. Each of those shows was sold out absolutely, completely. And you saw that people really spent top dollar to go and watch these homegrown artists. So I'm glad the lockdown has built like a ticket buyer's market finally for Indian homegrown artists, because now they would rather go for that versus wait for that one international concert to happen in 3 to 4 months.
And it's also, I think, a great trend to look at as you go ahead, right? If this is how audiences are going to stick to it, and I have a feeling they might, like he's an artist, for instance, Anuv Jain song I discovered during the lockdown. I didn't know who, and now I have like a bunch of, I think a large number of playlists are Indian independent artists, apart from much older music because I am older. But I think it's interesting that the audience is moving in that direction. What else do you see as trends as you look ahead? So these are things that definitely seem to be where consumers, brands, and artists are really moving towards.
So ticket buying for sure. I think more intimate experiences is what people are really enjoying most. Stuff that is a lot more curated versus just plain mass. I think that's what's going to do really well. And I feel that's a great opportunity for brands to explore as well, to do smaller cap, very well curated stuff versus going out to just do, say, for example, a 2,000, 5,000 person concert to show that you got X number of people to come in. You rather build something that is more exclusive, that is more difficult for you to get into, that is for which a person will really put an effort to go and visit versus doing something just for the sake of doing something big. I feel like our dependence in general on short form video will now slightly start reducing as well when it comes to music and marketing. I think that is, though everyone's talking about it a lot right now because of Instagram Reels, I feel the dependency on that is also going to start going down a lot more. I feel like we're going to go back to listening to our playlist versus just sampling the 30-second hook that we came to see. So better music is definitely going to come front and center because we're already seeing that with the charts right now. And I think one common trend which everyone has seen is that music is now absolutely borderless. It can cross over from anywhere and it's going to do really well. So I think we're going to see a lot of great regional artists coming up front and center and really taking the crown away right now.
What can also be, as I look at this, so that it's interesting to see that if we finally have that inflection point where the worlds of creator, celebrity in terms of film and music in that sense are coming together. And I think it's a cultural point where can you turn around and say, okay, this is when we can actually go to that defining juncture where as we move ahead, we finally going to have audiences who want to work with music as how audiences have globally in many ways. And as you said, moving away from just the short form stuff is a hallelujah moment in my head right now when you say it, because I think a lot of us have really want to go back to long form and like in-person experiences. But more than anything else from our entire chat, what I'm actually also getting is that there's almost a balance now. You're not overselling it to a brand. Brands have kind of understood a large part of that, although that viral word will not go away. But you'll also have this aspect where artists have figured out this is how I can actually do my craft well, still be able to monetize and not rely only on live music. I think that's Q now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is no longer that 80-20. You've been able to bring that a little bit more.
100%. So I think it's a great time from an overall economy point of view for artists. They're not dependent on one particular revenue stream anymore. They have multiple options open. Brands, earlier we would have to really educate them as to what we need to put forward. Now they already have. There have been a few great case studies which have actually done this for us, and they take that as a center point and they come to us with that saying, we want to build a moment of these sorts. And that's when we go back to them and tell them this is how it's happening. Brands are listening more than speaking, which is a great point for I think any agency, for any creative trying to pitch something to a brand. So I think that's a great space we're in. And I think going forward as well, something which we are very, very bullish about is more creator products, more artist-driven brands coming together. We obviously had a few really successful ones with NHRX, with Virat Kohli's 1-8, etc. But I feel like when creators come up with their own businesses, when artists set up their own various different brands, that's going to do really well. And globally, it's obviously a great pro in case with, for example, a Jay-Z who has so much stuff happening, with a Kanye who has so much stuff happening. I think that moment is finally going to start coming in India, and people are actually going to build really iconic brands through their craft now.
Yeah. And looking forward to that one. But I want to move to our last segment of the show, which since you're a listener, you know exactly what the questions are. So I'm like, do I stick to the same stuff or do I evolve this? But I think I might just stick to some of the same stuff. What do you spend a lot of time doing, Aayushman, beyond almost sitting at the intersection of holding together brands, artists, and everything else that's going on? What keeps you excited beyond what you do?
I'm a very, very, very curious person. So I spend a lot of time, and I feel like YouTube is the best education platform the world has to offer. So I spend a lot of time just trying to understand various different things. Like I think my YouTube and YouTube's algorithm is brilliant in my opinion, where they really suggest the best stuff to you. So I'm either spending a lot of time on podcasts or I'm trying to understand personal finance better, because I blew up all of my money as a kid. And I'm trying to learn a lot more about how we can help businesses scale. We've just, together with a few friends, we just started an investment syndicate. So we're trying to figure out how we can help businesses scale better beyond just capital. And I'm really enjoying that entire journey of understanding how various different businesses work, understanding them a lot better, understanding where their gaps are, understanding where we can jump in to fulfill these. So I'm just a very curious person. And when in my free time, I'm probably nerding out watching either a documentary or just any interesting YouTube videos that have a bit of an educational link to it.
What's most interesting thing you learned of YouTube recently? Since because that YouTube rabbit hole is amazing. You learn so many random things. But what is the most recent thing you learned?
So many. Wow, I'm not even able to think of this right now.
So while you think, I'll give you what I did this weekend. This weekend, I spent a lot of time on Hodinky because for some reason I decided to watch one watch video. And I spent the entire weekend revisiting analog watches and where their entire space has been. It was like I'm like, wow, this is a world I forgot existed, which is non-digital watches. So that's what I did. So which is very random. But I feel that you would have dug into something a little bit more resourceful.
Mine was really funny, and I'm pretty sure you're probably going to laugh at it. We all just finished with the year end, and I was obviously Googling tax saving methods. And the last few times, I think I've just been deep diving on how setting up an entity in the Cayman Islands is going to be a lot more beneficial down the lines, and what are the various different tax havens that are there to be able to do.
Haven't we all done that? We've all done that. I think I've researched a bunch of those as well. But we're here. We're tax-paying citizens as always. That disclaimer is right up there. What have you watched recently, which you would recommend, watched, listened to, or read?
I was actually hearing one of your podcasts, and I think the one you did with Dhruv was really exciting about the creator economy. I think that was one which I really enjoyed listening to. So yeah, that's going to be my recommendation for sure.
And my last question, which I'm now deciding if I should continue that, because at some point in time, it's becoming a tiring thing to turn around and say, how else can I spin this? Why will this not die? But if I was an artist today, how do I make sure that what I do does not die?
I think every artist, and that's also with every advertiser, I think everyone at the end of the day are storytellers. And I feel like we all have a lot of stories within us. As an advertiser, you're obviously trying to tell a story for a brand, but as an artist, you're telling your own story. And you have way too many experiences that you can talk about. And you would never know which one is going to click. You never know which one people are going to resonate with the most. So till the time you feel like you have a story in you, your art is not going to die. And the best part about music is it's timeless. We are seeing stuff coming back from years and years back, and which is why we even focus a lot on trying to own all the masters that we put out now, because we want that to be an asset the artist builds under them. But I feel like stories are never going to die, and storytellers are never going to die. So artists and their craft will probably never die.
Thank you so much, Aayushman. I'm happy we finally did this. It was a bunch of stuff for everyone to unpack and kind of learn from. So thanks for coming on Advertising Instead.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you so much.
If you like this podcast and you want to listen to more podcasts like this, head over to the IVM Podcast website or app or wherever you get your podcast from and look at all the podcasts that IVM makes. There's some really fun stuff there.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says, the real-life Suryavanshi Vishwas Nagare Patil joined CP Law & Order, talks to Cyrus about his new book, Head Held High. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam talks to Anusha Ramakrishna and Anisha Dosa, co-founders at Jiffy. They discuss the concept of earned wage access and its benefits. Hans Vani completes 100 episodes. Listen to this inspiring story of a boy's struggle called Shambuk, Platform or Pilla. On The Habit Coach, Ashton shares tips of how we can make our lives 10 times better. And on All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk analyze China's recently announced National Computing Network. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, please don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And remember, you can always check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels. You can go to ivmpodcast.com/YouTube to take a look at what those channels are. We're also doing a small listener survey to understand how you respond to our shows and the advertising on the network. We would really, really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It really helps us build better shows for you and understand what you're looking from advertising and what we can talk to advertisers about who you are. Please go to ivmpodcast.com/survey. It really, really, really would help us out. Thank you so much. And finally, would like to thank our sponsors for the network this week, SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Habits? Routines? How exactly do they help us get better? Well, to simplify it for you, tune in to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashton Doctor and I'm going to be here to help you get better daily with some simple, easy to do habits that you can easily adapt to your life. So tune in to the Habit Coach podcast from Monday to Friday because I believe